Good evening, my name is Irgy, and today I will present cross-cultural understanding end of semester project. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication refers to the process of conveying meaning without the use of spoken or written words. It, it encompasses a vast range of behavior and cues. Albert Mehrabian, in his 1971 book Silent Message, famously quantified the impact of verbal versus nonverbal cues in conveying feeling and attitudes. While often misquoted, his work underscored that nonverbal elements are critical, especially when messages are ambiguous. More comprehensively, Jude K. Bourdon and Laura K. Guerrero, in their seminal text Nonverbal Communication 1994 and subsequent edition, define NVC as encompassing of all stimuli other than words in a communicative setting generated by both the source and the environment. They categorize NVC into several codes, including kinesis, proxemics, haptic, chromics, paralanguage, and appearance and artifact. For example, 1. The job interview. Let's apply this theory to a common scenario, job interview. Nonverbal cues at play. Kinesis, a firm handshake, steady eye contact, and an open posture. Proxemics, sitting at an appropriate distance from the interviewer. Paralanguage, speaking in a clear, confident tone without rushed pace. And appearance, professional attire. How it fits the concept. This example perfectly illustrates Bourdon and Guerrero's code in action. This nonverbal signal work in tandem with the applicant verbal answer to complement, reinforce, and often regulate the interaction. For instance, nodding while the interviewer speaks shows active listening critically. If there is a disconnect, say someone claims they are very enthusiastic but speak in a monotone and avoid eye contact, the interviewer will likely believe the nonverbal cues, demonstrating Mehrabian's point about their perceived believability in communicating through attitude. The nonverbal behavior manages the impression and defines the professional relationship. In example 2, a cultural misunderstanding. The second example involves a business meeting between an American executive and a Japanese potential partner. The scene: the American is presenting a proposal. When he finishes, the Japanese executive listens politely, nods, and says softly, "That is very interesting. We will consider it carefully." However, he also inhales sharply through his teeth, producing a side sound. Nonverbal cues at play. Paralanguage, the soft, hesitant vocal tone and the specific inhale sound. And kinesis, polite but potentially strained nodding. How it fits the concept. This is a case where nonverbal communication contradicts or substitutes for the verbal message. In American culture, the words might be taken of face value as positive interest. However, in Japanese communication culture, as detailed in works like Communication Across Culture by Helen Spencer Oeti and Peter Franklin, such as inhaled sound aitsatsu, is a powerful nonverbal cue often signaling difficulty, reluctance, or a negative response. It is a polite, indirect substitute for a direct no. This example highlights an ambiguity and profound cultural specifically in NVC code. Failing to read this nonverbal sign can lead to significant miscommunication, underscoring that NVC is not a universal language but it's deeply shaped by context. Gesture. A gesture is a deliberate, meaningful movement of a body, especially the hands and arms, to communicate an idea, intention, or feeling. The leading theorist in this field is David McNeill. In his book Hand and Mind, What Gesture We Feel About Thought, 1992, he developed a seminal classification system for gesture based on their relationship for speech and meaning. Iconic gesture, movement that pictorially represent the content of speech. For example, moving hand apart while saying it was a long face. Metaphoric gesture, movement that depict an abstract idea as if it had physical form. For example, presenting cup hand as if offering an idea. The deictic pointing gesture, movement that indicate a person, object, or a location space. Look over there. And beat gesture, simple, rhythmic movement that punctuate speech and mark its tempo, while often with no semantic meaning themselves. McNeil's core argument is that gesture and speech are integrated systems emerging from the same cognitive process. Gestures are not merely add-ons, they are info into the speaker thinking, often revealing thought not yet fully formulated into words. For example, 1. A teacher explaining a concept. Imagine a physics teacher explaining planetary motion. The scene, the teacher saying, so the Earth does not travel in a perfect circle around the Sun. It moves in an elliptical orbit. As she say elliptical orbit, she used both hands to trace a wide, flattened oval shape in the air. How it fits the concept. This is a classic iconic gesture as defined by McNeil. The hand movement creates a visual model of a verbal concept, the shape of an ellipse. It complements and reinforces the spoken word, providing a spatial visual channel of information that aids the student's understanding. The gesture is co-expressive with speech embodying the same idea through a different modality. It likely aids not only the listener comprehension but also the teacher's own cognitive process of articulating a complex spatial relationship, supporting McNeil's theory of an integrated speech gesture system. And example 2, the air quotes gesture. Now consider a different scenario. Someone in a meeting saying the boss was delighted with the report, while making quick upward flexing movement of the first two fingers on both hands at the word delighted. How it fits the concept. This is a highly conventionalized metaphoric gesture, often called air quotes. According to McNeil framework, it is taking an abstract concept, in this case, skepticism, irony, or distance from the literal meaning of a word and giving it a physical form. It does not depict a physical object but a linguistic and attitudinal concept. Crucially, this gesture often contradicts or comments on the verbal message. The word delighted is stated, but the gesture frame it as supposedly so-called delight, fundamentally altering the meaning. So this is part 1. Let's move to part 2. Case study: stereotypes of Chinese Indonesian. In many communities, there is a common stereotype that Chinese people are naturally good at mathematics, business, and are likely to own, shop, or run commercial activities. However, their stereotypes does not always reflect reality. In this case, Chen Chen, who comes from a Chinese Indonesian or Peranakan family, struggles with numbers and does not excel in mathematics. She also has no interest in business and does not plan to own a shop. Despite this, people around her often assume she should be good at counting or managing money simply because of her ethnic background. What type of stereotype is presented in this case? The stereotype present is a positive stereotype that functions as a rigid cultural assumption. positive stereotypes. On the surface, being labeled as naturally good at mathematics and business appears complementary. It assigns value trail to an entire group, unlike negative stereotypes that are overfly hostile. This one seemed to praise cultural assumption. It has become a deeply ingrained, generalized belief in the societal narrative, applied automatically to individual based solely on their ethnic background without consideration for personal aptitude or interests. Why it's problematic? The positive label is deceptive, while assigned traits are socially desirable. The process of stereotyping itself is harmful. It flattens individually, creates unfair expectation, and can mask underlying prejudice. It often originates from and reinforces a model minority might, which can be used to drive wedge between ethnic groups and justify overlooking systematic barriers faced by individuals within the stereotypes group. What are negative impact of the stereotypes on Gen? The impact are multifaceted and insignificant, emotional, and psychological. Gen likely experience internal conflict, anxiety, and imposter syndrome. She may feel pressure to conform to an identity that isn't hers, leading to stress and a sense of inadequacy when she doesn't meet this external expectation. She may also feel invisible and misunderstood as people see a stereotype before they see her true self. Social relationship can be strained. Friend or acquaintance might make intention but hurtful comments or express disbelief of her struggle. This can make her feel delineate and reduce the social interaction to a narrow predetermined role. Academic. In school, teacher might unconsciously expect more from her in math or business subject, interpreting her average performance as laziness rather than a simple lack of affinity for the subject. Conversely, her genuine talents in other might be overlooked or undervalued because they don't fit the expected narrative. Cultural and identify related. The stereotype imposes a prescriptive identify on Chen. As a Peranakan, she has a rich, blended cultural heritage. However, the stereotypes reduce this complex identity to an one-dimensional economic caricature. It can create a barrier to exploring and expressing the full spectrum of her personal and cultural interests, potentially causing her to resent or distance herself from aspects of her heritage associated with the stereotypes. Are there any positive effects of this stereotype? There are no genuine positive impact for Chen as an individual. Any perceived benefits are illusory and come with high costs. The illusion of advantage. One may argue the stereotype could open doors. However, it is not a benefit for Chen who has no interest in business. Furthermore, such as assumption is not based on her actual skill or resume, but on a biased perception. When her true disinterest or skill level become apparent, it could damage our credibility more than if no assumption had been made. Why it's harmful overall? The harm lies in the denial of individuality and agency. A stereotype, even a positive one, is a tool of cognitive laziness that replaces seeing a person with seeing a label. It dehumanizes by ignoring personal choice, struggle, and uniqueness creates unfair pressure to conform to an external standard, perpetuates prejudice by reinforcing the idea that ethnic groups are monolithic and that individual behavior is biologically or culturally predetermined. They divert attention from the real diverse experience of individuals within the group. What specific stereotype is highlighted in this case? The specific stereotype is in Chinese and Indonesian as a natural entrepreneur and mathematician. Description: this is a pervasive stereotype in Indonesia that frame ethnic Chinese, particularly the Peranakan, as inherently possessing a business mind, a natural talent for numbers and commerce, and a primary drive toward economic accumulation. It is historically linked to their roles in trade and intermediate economies during colonial periods and has been perpetuated through generations. Influence on perception. The stereotype acts as a cognitive filter through which people perceive Shenzhen. Expectation. People expect her to be good at math, counting, and financial management. They are primed to look for and interpret her action through this lens. Interpretation. Her average performance in math is seen as an anomaly or a personal failing, rather than a normal variation in human ability. Her lack of interest in business is met with confusion, seen as a rejection of her inherited role. Oversimplification. It prevents people from seeing the complete picture of who Chen Chen is, her other academic strength, her hobby, her personality, and her own dream. She is pigeonholed into a narrow category, making it difficult for her to establish an identity on her own terms. People interact with the stereotype, not the person. Summary of presentation: international culturally. Defining culture. Presentation begins by defining culture not just as art or food, but as a collective programming of the mind. It is a shared set of values, beliefs, and behavior that distinguishes one group of people from another. The cultural iceberg theory. The central theme of the presentation is the iceberg model of culture, which suggests surface culture. These are the things we can easily see, hear, or touch, such as food, dress, music, language, and celebration. Deep culture. These are the underlying values that drive behavior, such as notion of time, concepts of personal space, attitudes toward authority, nonverbal communication rules, and core belief. This presentation emphasizes that most cultural misunderstandings happen at this submerged level. Half-state cultural dimension. The material covers several key dimensions used to compare different cultures. Individualism versus collectivism. Whether people prioritize I or we. Power distance. How a society handles inequality and authority. High power distance culture accept hierarchy, while low power distance cultures strive for equality. Uncertainty avoidance. The degree to which a culture feels threatened by ambiguity and tries to avoid it through strict rules and tradition. High context versus low context communication. The presentation highlights how different cultures communicate. Low context communication is explicit, direct, and literal. What is said is exactly what is meant. High context communication is nuanced. Much of the message is carried by the physical context, body language, and silence rather than just a word. Cultural intelligence. The session concludes with the important of cultural intelligence, which is the ability to function effectively across various cultural contexts. It encouraged students to develop awareness of their own cultural biases, practice empathy while encountering different behaviors, and adjust their communication style to bridge cultural gaps. Case study: body language misunderstanding. How does the Amran, an Indonesian student, feel confused when an American friend greets him by raising a hand with the fingers spread open. In Indonesian, this gesture is commonly understood as a signal to stop. However, in the US, the same gesture is often used as a casual way to say hello or wave. This misunderstanding makes Amran unsure how to respond, and he begins to feel uncomfortable in social interaction. He worries that he might appear rude if he reacts the wrong way, or that he might misinterpret other gestures in the future. How does this situation show that body language can lead to culture shock? The situation is clear, direct example of how verbal communication can become a source of culture shock. Culture shock, as defined by theorists like Kaifer Oberg, is the anxiety and confusion resulting from being immersed in an unfamiliar culture where familiar symbols and behavior carry different meanings. Amran confusion. Amran instinctive cultural framework tells him the palm forward finger spread gesture means stop or half. This is a learned automatic association in Indonesia when his American friend used it to say hello. It creates cognitive dissonance, a clash between his expected meaning and the intended meaning. Source of misunderstanding. This is not a language barrier but a nonverbal semantic barrier. The physical action is identical but its dictionary meaning is entirely different across the two cultures. Such incidents are particularly disorienting because body language is often processed subconsciously. We don't consciously translate gesture like we do words. When these subconscious cues malfunction, it undermines a person's confidence in their basic ability to interpret social reality, which is a core element of culture shock. Amran begins to doubt not just his gesture, but his entire ability to navigate social interaction. What cultural factor influenced the meaning of the body language in this case? The primary cultural factor at play is the culturally specific symbolism and convention attached to physical gesture. Arbitrary cultural coding. There is no inherent universal reason why a raised palm means stop in one piece and hello in another. The meaning are arbitrarily assigned and socially constructed within each culture through repeated use and shared understanding. They become part of the culture of nonverbal lexicon. Contextual rules. The meaning is reinforced by context. In Indonesia, the gesture is likely used in a specific situation. In the US, it is used in different contexts. The cultural factor is unspoken rule about when and how the gesture is appropriately deployed. High versus low context. This also relates to Hall's concept of high and low context culture. Indonesia, as a higher context culture, might rely more on one situation-dependent meanings. The American usage, while also contextual, represents a different set of situational rules that Amran has not yet internalized. What negative effect might this misunderstanding have on Amran interaction with others? The negative effect can cascade from a single incident into broader social anxiety, immediate embarrassment, and uncertainty. In the moment, Amran likely froze, unsure whether to stop walking, wave back, or do nothing. This creates an awkward social moment where he may feel foolish or appear unresponsive, increase anxiety and self-consciousness. As state he begins to overthink future interaction, he may become hypervigilant about body language, leading to anxiety in simple social exchange. This is a classic symptom of culture shock, losing spontaneity in communication. Miscommunication and perceived rudeness. If Amron were to misinterpret the gesture as stop and half his approach, the American friend might perceive him as a confused, unfriendly, or odd. Conversely, if Amron later used an Indonesian gesture that is offensive in the US, it could lead some serious offense, all based on innocent miscommunication, social hesitation, and withdrawal. The fear of making more mistakes may cause Amron to withdraw from the casual social interaction. He may avoid greeting people, limit conversation, or stick only to other Indonesians, thereby hindering his cultural integration and making his adjustment period longer and more isolating. What problem-solving strategies can help Amran handle this situation? Amran can employ several proactive and reactive strategies to manage and overcome this challenge. First, adopt a learning mindset. View the confusion not as a failure, but as a data point. Instead of thinking, I made a mistake, he can think, I just learned that here, this gesture means hello. This reduces anxiety and turns moments of shock into moments of learning. Polite clarification in the moment. He can respond with a gentle, curious question. For example, with a smile. Oh, where I'm from. That gesture means stop. Do you use it to say hello here? This is non-confrontational. Show cultural awareness and instantly clarifies the meaning. It also invites a cultural exchange, proactive observation, and mimicry. Amran can become an active observer. He should watch how locals greet each other in different settings. What gesture do they use? What is the typical disdain, eye contact, and tone? He can then courteously mirror this behavior, which is a form of communication accommodation theories convergence. Dedicate learning. He can seek out resource books, reputable online articles, or university workshops on American nonverbal communication and common gesture. Learning a short list of gestures with different meanings would be particularly empowering. Find a cultural mentor. Building a friendship with culturally sensitive American friend or an international student advisor who can serve as a cultural informant. He can ask them questions about confusing interaction in the safe, low-stake environments. And last, practice and patience. Understood that such misunderstandings are a normal and unexpected part of cross-cultural adaptation. He should be patient with himself, acknowledge his feeling of discomfort, and recognize that competence will come with time and exposure. Sharing his experience with other international students can also provide social support. So that's all my presentation. I'm sorry if there is misunderstanding words or my spell, and thank you.